Hey guys, this is Jsnow, and we're with the flavor deck called The Wall, based on Donald Trump's wall. Yes, this video will trigger people. Yes, it's meant to be a flavor deck. If you don't know what a flavor deck is basically a deck that uses different types of cards, usually similar cards together to make some kind of either storyline or based on something in real life. So this is mainly a fun budget deck, and I did test it. It can win and it's an absolutely fun deck. So despite the references I'm gonna make, they may make you cringe, they may make you laugh, but that is the point of the video. If I did either one, I think I did a good job. So anyway, thanks for watching this video, and let's get into the deck. So obviously we have to have Steel Wall. I mean, there are much better cards than Steel Wall, but taking this out would completely kill the flavor of the deck. You just have to have this in your deck. So what does Steel Wall do? It's a colorless artifact creature, it's 1 mana, and it's a 0/4, and walls can't attack. So I did look up the ruling. I guess they changed from the older cards that walls are now defenders. So wall and defender are the same thing, so they can both are basically the same thing. All walls have defender, and you can use assault formation, which I'll get to in a second, to have this card use its power as attack. So we run. I mean, I might be slightly wrong in that rule because it's a little confusing, but I just looked up on MTG Salvation that it seemed like walls have defender automatically because they changed the rulings. So basically, this is a 0/4. This is basically a 4/4 for 1 in this deck with the use of, I guess I'll flash it really quick, Assault Formation, which we'll talk about in a bit. So obviously, the Steel Wall, you know who has to pay for it. It has to pay for the wall, and we're going to make them pay for the wall, or the wall's going to swing for 4 damage. Now, we run 2 of them. This is a card you can swap out though, so we'll put those to the side. I'm actually running this on 60 FPS, so hopefully the video quality comes out pretty good. So I guess let me know in the comments if you like the video quality. Next we have Skinshifter. So this is the man himself, Donald J. Trump. And now, why do I say that? There's a couple of reasons. A, he has nice, golden, blonde, beautiful hair. And B, Skinshifter's effect is flexibility. And to be a good leader, like he says, you have to be a little bit flexible. So Skinshifter is a 2-cost, green and 1 colorless mana human shaman. He's a 1/1, which is a pretty low stat. But he has an amazing ability where if you pay a forest, you can choose one. And until the end of the turn, he can become a 4/4 rhino. So I guess that I would reference the Trump train. We're going to smash right through because the card gains trample. So you can turn into a 4/4 Trump train. You can either turn into a 2/2 bird. So with flying, which is really important because you need flying blockers, and it's kind of like him mounting the American Eagle. So it's a pretty funny reference, in my opinion. So he mounts the eagle, or you can make him a 0/8 plant. So you can make him a 0/8 money tree, and with this deck in assault formation, that's an 8/8 pretty much. You basically paid 3 mana to make an 8/8 absolute monster to destroy your opponent. So this card is really amazing. And I don't have 4 of them, but you should be running 4 Donalds or 4 Skinshifters. Right now I have 3. But definitely run 4 if you can make the room for it. Now his top advisors. So here we have is benthic infiltrator, or as I would like to call him, Chris Christie. What do you call it? So why do I call him Chris Christie? Well, easily, I guess this is probably just a lame joke, but this card has Devoid, which it has no color, and it has Ingest. And we all know Chris Christie likes to ingest. So whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. That's an okay effect. It's not really used in this deck. But the most important thing is the infiltrator can't be blocked. So if you have assault formation out, this card can attack automatically for 4. It basically becomes a 4/4 and can't be blocked with ingest. So it's a pretty cool card. But this is a card that's kind of subjective. So you can get rid of, so you can put 1 in, you can put 2 in, you can put 3 in. It pretty much varies on how you want to play the deck. This deck has a lot of, flexibility around it. And of course we run another one, and I just call him Ben Carson. So we have Ben Carson and Chris Christie. And now we have Ornithopter. Now this is a great card because it's obviously a 0-cost 0/2. So it's basically a free 2/2 beater once you have assault formation out. It has flying, so it can block creatures with flying. And this is the Trump copter, obviously. This is the Trump helicopter. You're going to use this to get in the early game and land and prepare the stumpings. So we run 2. You can easily run 4 if you want, but I run 2. Tree of Redemption. Now this is a funny card, and it's also the money tree. So this is how the money tree where Donald puts all his money. So the Tree of Redemption is actually a mythic, and it's a 4-cost creature with 13 power, and it has Defender. So if you use Soul Formation, you have a 13/13 creature for 4. That's absolutely insane. Basically, if this gets out on the field and your opponent doesn't have much to deal with it, you pretty much win the game. And it has a bonus effect of if you tap it, you can exchange your life total with Tree of Redemption's toughness. So this is really only the only life gain in the deck. I think we have lands that life gain, but otherwise this is how you're gonna play. You can play around with your life. So in case you get to really low life, you could play Tree of Redemption next turn. If you survive, you could switch it with its toughness and get 13 life or less if you did use this to block or attack. So it's a very, very good card. I only run one because it can get a little bit situational, but amazing card. Next, what's a wall without its vines? Walls grow vines, so we have extra walls on top of your walls to add more walls. So Vine Trellis is a 0/4. It has the old text on it because it's an old card from 8th edition, but it is legal in modern. And this card is really great because it's basically a mana dork. You can just add 1 forest to your mana pool. So it's kind of self-explanatory and very good. We run 4 of those to get the extra mana. Next one, I love this reference that I just figured out. We have Obsessive Skinner. So this is actually what I call it the Obsessive Republicans. And the best part about this I'll explain in a second. We'll just explain the card itself. So it's a human rogue for 2. It's a 1/1. And when Obsessive Skinner enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And it also has Delirium, which is the new effect in Magic, in Shadows over Innistrad. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if there are 4 or more types among cards in your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each target creature. So that basically means if you have, let's say, an instant, a sorcery, a land, and a creature in the graveyard, as long as you have 4 types, this card keeps buffing up the creatures. So I call it Obsessive Republicans because it's pretty funny because they obsess over him, they try to stump him, and you just cannot stump the Trump. So this card basically, the more they try to stump the Trump, this card basically buffs up the other creatures. So you can easily play this with your walls, and basically the strategy with this is you want to play with your walls. So you want to give a +1/+1 counter to either your walls or any of the cards that don't have Defender are a better target. So any card that doesn't have Defender, like the benthic infiltrators, it's definitely a good target for this. And of course, the Delirium effect is just a slight bonus. I mean, if you can get the Delirium effect, you're probably winning already, but it's a great effect because it just keeps going off at each end phase. So I run 1 Obsessive Republicans. You can run maybe 2, I think, max, without getting it too bad. Tide Drifter, this is kind of like just a budget card. There's no joke here, unfortunately, but this card is a 2-cost blue and a colorless for a 0/5 creature. It's okay, and other colorless creatures you control get +1, so that effect, it's pretty good because then you can build the wall 10 feet higher. So you can build the wall 10 feet higher by giving it a +1 while this is out on the field. Same thing goes for any other colorless creatures you control. So he's pretty cool. I just run 1 of. Oh, we do run 2 Obsessive Republicans. Alright, so yeah, run 2. Alright, next one. So this card originally did not have a joke attached to it until I read the flavor text. So this is Kraken Hatchling. It's a 1-cost blue 0/4. And it doesn't have Defender. That's probably the most important point. That this card does not have Defender, so it can attack without having to activate Assault Formation's second ability. So I call this the Hungry Hungry Kasich Meal. So we run 2 Hungry Hungry Kasich Meals. If you don't know what Hungry Hungry Kasich is, just do a quick Google of it, because the whole entire election, nobody remembers who Kasich is. So anyway, the flavor text, it's funny, is a spike and a mole are needed to crack their shells, but the taste is worth the effort. And I think that flavor text perfectly describes John Kasich, which is pretty funny. But this card does make a good replacement. If you want to lose out on the flavor and replace the steel walls, then go for Kraken Hatchling as a replacement, because it's basically the same thing as steel wall, but it doesn't have any type of defender limiting it. So that means less mana to be used to attack. And lastly, I'm probably going to drop this card, is Fogbank. It's cool because it's a flying defender. Unfortunately, there's no memes or jokes to it. but it prevents all combat damage that would be dealt and dealt by this card. So basically this card does no damage. It's kind of just a chump, unlimited chump blocker until it gets like removed by removal. So it is a good card, but for some reason I haven't found too much luck with this card at the moment because of the fact you can't actually deal damage. So it's like a stolen card. Of our enchantments and spells is Assault Formation. This is a must-have of 4. There's no way you can avoid this. The deck does not work without this card. Also, if this card gets destroyed and you can't find a backup quick enough, you will probably lose the game. Unfortunately, this deck relies heavily on Assault Formation, but that's where the fun comes in. And I mean, just to give up a little bit of, I guess, you know, playability to have some fun hitting people with 13/13 walls is definitely worth it. So what does this card do? It's 2 mana, it's enchantment from Dragons of Takir. Each creature you control assigns its combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So for example, benthic infiltrator is a 1/4. If you have Assault Formation out, when this attacks, it becomes a 4. It's basically a 4/4 when it attacks. So that's amazing. Next example, Ornithopter. It's a 0/2 with flying. Obviously it's free to play. And it's basically it becomes a 2/2 and you can attack. Now here's where the second ability comes in. So for example, Steel Wall. What do you call it? So for Steel Wall, you can use the green mana, the second ability, and that means target creature with Defender can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. So because walls are basically also defenders, hopefully I got this right, otherwise people are going to blast me in the comments. But anyways, I looked it up beforehand, so I'm pretty sure. Just repeating myself. But anyway, basically you lose Defender, and this thing becomes a 4/4 for 1, and you can swing with it. But it does cost 1 mana. So that's the drawback to having Steel Wall for the flavor. So obviously if you want to make the deck more competitive, you're better off putting more cards like Ornithopter, where they can actually attack regardless if they have Defender. Excuse me, Defender or not. My voice just cracked. Excuse me. Alright, so we run 4 of those, obviously. Now we have the stump cards. So as we know, you can't stop the trump. I mean, you can't stump the trump. And these are the stump cards. So you could run any number of these depending on how many times you want to stump your opponent. So these are just 2 example cards that are pretty nice. One is Vapor Snag. Basically for 1 mana, you return a creature to its owner's hand and its controller loses 1 life. So when you stump somebody, you're basically setting them back in their place. So Vapor Snag is obviously the perfect example, because for 1 measly mana, you're getting rid of their creature for a turn, and they're losing a life. So, 420, stumped. Next one is the spell, counter target instant spell. Once again, they play an instant spell, you stump them by dropping this right after they drop their instance, and they're stumped. So I only have 2 stump cards in this deck. You can run more, so negate is also good, and stuff like that. I will go into some extra cards later. Commune with the Gods. So this one's pretty funny because on the subreddit r the Donald, if you guys haven't seen that one, not safe for work though. I will say that 1,000 times. Not safe for work. But it's the Donald forum, and they refer to him as the God Emperor. So Commune with the Gods, of course, just makes the perfect fix. You're basically asking Donald Trump for some help. So what this card actually does, it's for 2 mana, sorcery. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or enchantment card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into the graveyard. Now, be warned. This card, while amazing in this deck, has a huge drawback that cards go into the graveyard. And this deck does not really have any cards that can help return things from the graveyard. So, if you ever get Assault Formation, which we have right here, if you ever get Assault Formation in your hand, basically 95% of the time you must take Assault Formation because you can't afford to be throwing these into the graveyard. Yeah, you might lose some of your stump cards or other powerful creatures, but if you start dumping Assault Formations in the graveyard, you are going to lose. So this is basically a card just for Assault Formation, kind of. So we run 2 of those. Next one. So these are the kill cards. This is how you actually kill your opponent, which is pretty funny. So we'll take the Wall, for example. So we'll show you how you can beat down somebody with the Wall. So basically the main strategy with this deck is to have Assault Formation out. Right? So you can have your creature attack and have enough mana. So for example, let's say we have Assault Formation out, Steel Wall can attack. The 2 cards that can kill people are Tower Defense. So Tower Defense is also, you know, we gotta defend our wall, so we gotta have some little towers on it and defend the wall. Tower Defense is amazing because for 2 mana, you're getting +0/+5 and you gain reach. So you can swing for 9 if you play this, if your opponent's board is open. or B, you can kill one of their flying blockers and they'll at least they won't expect this. This is usually like one of the trump cards, pun intended, and they won't expect it, and you'll kill their amazing flying creature or whatever. And basically what the strategy is with this deck is you want your opponent to not expect you. You want to be a nimble navigator. And you want to be unexpected, so when they tap out completely and you still have the walls on the field, that's when you want to swing with this and combo this card. And if you didn't kill them yet, hopefully, we run 4 of these, so run 4. Hopefully you can also combo the U.S. Marines, or the U.S. or I should say the U.S. Border Patrol. So I call this card the U.S. Border Patrol because it's called Triton Tactics, and it has 2 little guys who look like soldiers. It's a 1 cost and absolutely insane for this deck. So up to 2 target creatures each get 0 plus 0 plus 3 until the end of the turn, which is not that much attack. But you can untap those creatures, and if any of those creatures blocks an opponent's creature, that creature can't untap. So not only is the second effect good, it's almost never needed. Oh crap. It's almost never needed because usually you can just combo 2 defenders, so 2 steel walls for example, 1 tower defense, 1 triton tactics, and for the most part you can usually just kill off your opponent. So for example, what I did was I was facing my brother in one duel, and what happened was I had 2 defenders out. He had 19 life left, and I somehow top decked, of course, Assault Formation as my last card. I was actually going to lose pretty badly. So I top decked Assault Formation, played Assault Formation. I attacked with Steel Wall. I attacked with both Steel Walls, and then, what do you call it? I gave both the creatures Triton Tactics and Tower Defense, and I kind of just lucked out because now going back to Assault Formation, its second effect is if you pay 3 mana, creatures you control get 0 plus 1 until the end of the turn. And that second effect made the difference between hitting him for 18 life and losing the game, or hitting him for game. So I did forget to mention that, but the second effect buffs your walls. You build it 10 feet higher. So that's the kill combo. So you want to save basically these cards. Also Vines of Vastwood. I mean, this is kind of like a staple card in a lot of decks. It's a 1 cost that has kicker, which means if you pay 2, then the creature gets hexproof. Oh no, wait. The creature gets it basically gets hexproof and +4/+4. So if you need to defend your wall, you obviously can play Vines of Vastwoods if they try to remove it, but you want to save this for the kicker ability. You don't really want to waste this just to save your creature for 1. You want to be using both manas to save your creature as well as pump it up and build it 10 feet higher. Alright, last card is Commune with the Gods. It's kind of the same thing. It's the same thing. I mean, Commune with the Gods. It's Commune with Nature, my bad. They both start with the same word. This is the same thing, but a little bit better because the cards go to the bottom of your library instead. I didn't have enough of these, but I would definitely suggest if you don't want to risk it with Commune of the Gods, then use this. But this does not search enchantments. So if you need to cycle your creatures, this is pretty good. But you can't get enchantments from this, but it also won't throw your enchantments into the graveyard. So that's good as well. So that's the deck. Let's go into the lands lastly. Otherwise this video is going to take freaking forever. So we'll try to do this really quick. So we have Thornwood Falls is a great budget staple. It's a life land. It comes into play tap, gives you a life. Holdout Settlements, you could probably drop these. They're okay. They add colorless mana. Then just have an even amount of forest and blues, and you should be good. So I run about 18 lands in this deck, because the deck can usually go off with about 5 lands on the field. So it's not really a huge, you don't need that many lands. Now lastly, some extra cards. So I did not make a side deck, but I do have a few cards on me that could help out. Some of them do have jokes to them, some of them don't. So what we have here is Incremental Growth. So this is actually in place of any card that gives counters on creatures. So obviously this card is pretty janky. Incremental Growth means, he's unstoppable, he's involved. Donald Trump is slowly evolving. But basically just any card that buffs up a creatures or puts counters on them is a good replacement for any of the buff cards in the deck. So I just have Incremental Growth kind of as a placeholder for that. Negate is a great card. It counters target non-creature spells, so that means it hits enchantments, instants, and sorceries. And it costs 2. This is basically another stump card you can add, so you can switch this in and out depending on what kind of decks you're facing. This is definitely a card I would put in the sideboard. Next one, Uninvited Geist. This is my favorite card in Magic the Gathering. And it does work here, because if you think about it, they don't want Trump to get into the White House. So he's the Uninvited Geist, and he has Skulk, where he can attack without being blocked by creatures with greater power. And when he deals combat damage, he transforms it. So in the essence of Donald Trump only growing stronger once he gets in, he transforms into Unimpeded Trespasser, which is a little too spooky for me, and probably not a great representation of Trump, but anyways, you know, Unimpeded Trespasser, he gets huge, I should say, and it can't be blocked. It's my favorite card. I will probably just throw this into any deck known to man. We have Elusive Spellfist. This is in some wall builds, because if you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. But I did not find a good use for this. I used to run 4 of these in the original deck, but I couldn't really find a use for this. Maybe you guys can, but it's another option. Taproot Kami, same thing. It gains attack equal to number forest in play, and it can block creatures with flying, but most of the time I did not have enough forest to make this work. So unless you want to drop the blue color altogether, then you can just go with the steel walls and maybe this and forest, but who knows. And then we have Weirding Wood. Unfortunately, no joke, but what do you call it? This allows you to enchant a land to get extra mana, and also has Investigate, which puts Clue token that you could sacrifice for 2 and draw a card. This card I should probably add because flying is the biggest threat, and this card is just so OP, and it's absolutely dirt cheap. Just buy the card if you play Magic if you don't have it already. But basically, each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. This card is amazing. It's only 2 cost. It's a common, extremely budget. Can't argue with that. And lastly, I have Haunted Cloak. This is basically a filler for any type of equipment card that can help out your deck. This one gives a creature Vigilance, Trample, and Haste for 3 and then 1 equipped. So, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I don't do as many Magic deck techs because I need to make sure the decks work. So it took a while for this to get this card to work, so I'll just go through this. But otherwise, I mean, the deck is super fun to play, tons of flavor. You can trigger your opponents if you want to, and it's just awesome to play. And it only costs around, the most expensive card is basically Skinshifter, Tree of Redemption, and Vine Tendrils. I think Vine Tendrils, even though it's a common, I think it's expensive if I remember. I mean, I bought it a while ago, but those are really the only expensive cards. Most of the cards in this deck are under 10 cents. Assault Formation's also probably $1 also. But there's no card in this deck that's really over $5 at all. So you should be able to build this deck for around, I'm going to just guesstimate $30. Or you can get 90% of the deck for around $30. But then again, you can edit it. If you want more Commune of the Gods, if you want less of them, do you want more Commune of the Natures? Do you want to drop blue altogether and just go with green-white? Green-white is also another good wall deck, which I might make. I don't know if I can do the Trump theme again, but there is a white-green wall deck that's pretty damn powerful. It's actually probably slightly better than this. And that's all. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe, all that good shit, and I'll see you guys next time.